The alien queen tested me for one night, and deemed me worthy of the crown Elias had never expected his life to change in a single night. One moment, he was sitting in the quiet hum of his small Earth apartment, staring at the screens showing distant galaxies, imagining what life beyond humanity might be like. The next, a low vibration filled the room, the air shimmering like liquid glass, and a voice spoke directly in his mind. It was not human. It was melodic yet commanding, strange in tone, and it carried a weight that made his heartbeat quicken. "You are chosen," the voice said. "Prepare yourself for the journey." Before he could respond, the room dissolved into light. Colors stretched and twisted, forming shapes that had no name, as if reality itself were being rewritten. Elias felt his body move without moving, a sensation that was dizzying and thrilling all at once. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the world snapped back, and he was no longer in his apartment. He found himself standing on a platform that seemed to float in the void of space. Stars stretched endlessly in every direction, brighter and closer than any telescope had ever shown him. The platform was smooth and white, with soft light coming from somewhere unseen. Elias took a cautious step forward, the sensation of zero gravity washing over him, yet his feet felt anchored as if the platform itself understood his weight. From the darkness of space, shapes emerged. They were tall, elegant, and unlike anything he had ever seen. Their skin shimmered with faint patterns, moving as though alive. Their limbs were long, their eyes larger than humans, filled with intelligence and curiosity. They did not speak, at least not in any language he could recognize, but he understood their intent. They were guards waiting for him, silent and imposing. A deep thought entered his mind, clear and precise. "Follow us." Elias hesitated only for a moment. His instincts told him to run, to resist, but a stronger part of him, the part that had always sought the stars, pushed him forward. He followed the figures along the floating platform, which led to a massive structure that seemed to hang in space without support. The palace was enormous, with towers and arches made of materials that glowed from within. Light and shadow moved across its surfaces as if it were alive. He felt small, not just physically, but in his understanding of this place, this empire that clearly spanned the galaxy. At the entrance, a massive door opened. Elias stepped through, and the room inside took his breath away. It was vast, impossibly high, with walls that reflected the colors of distant nebulae. Strange symbols moved across the surfaces, patterns that seemed to communicate something he could not yet understand. In the center of the room, a throne floated above a platform of crystal. It shimmered with a light that was at once soft and blinding. And sitting upon it, radiating authority and power, was the queen. She was taller than any human, with skin that changed color subtly, shifting like liquid metal in the light. Her eyes were golden, vast, and knowing, and her hair floated around her head as if suspended in water. Her presence alone demanded attention, and Elias felt every doubt, every fear he had brought with him pressed down by the force of her gaze. "You are Elias," she said, her voice both spoken and felt in his mind, echoing with authority. "You have been chosen to face the trial. One night, one test. Succeed, and you may earn a place beyond your imagining. Fail, and your species will continue without you." The words were shocking. Humans were not unknown to this empire, but rarely had one been summoned to the palace itself. It was an honor and a danger beyond measure. Elias swallowed, trying to steady his voice. "Why me?" he asked. The queen's eyes softened for the briefest moment, though her expression remained regal. "You were observed, you think differently, you act unpredictably. That is what we require." Elias had never considered himself extraordinary. He was clever, perhaps, and brave when needed, but nothing remarkable, at least by human standards. Yet the queen's words made something stir inside him. A spark of pride, tempered by fear, rose. "You will have guidance," she continued, "but not interference. The trial will test your mind, your courage, your judgment. You must act, think, and survive under conditions you have never faced. The night is long, and every choice matters." A door opened behind her throne, revealing a corridor that seemed to stretch into infinity. Elias felt the pull of destiny, terrifying, exhilarating, impossible to resist. The queen gestured, and the alien guards moved aside, signaling him forward. As he stepped into the corridor, the world seemed to change. Gravity shifted, walls twisted, and holographic projections appeared around him, showing scenes of alien worlds, battles, and civilizations that rose and fell. Each projection demanded analysis, Each scenario required him to make decisions that had consequences he could barely imagine. Elias realized the first part of the trial had begun, a test of his mind. Aliens surrounded him in the projections, not as threats but as puzzles, their logic clear yet alien, impossible to predict. Human reasoning often relied on intuition and creativity, while these simulations demanded precision. Yet the human mind had a certain flexibility, an ability to see patterns that were not obvious, to improvise where rigid logic failed. Hours passed, though he had no way to measure them. Every choice, every hesitation was observed, catalogued, evaluated. Elias faced scenarios where he had to save thousands of lives with limited information, negotiate between hostile alien factions, and find solutions to problems that seemed unsolvable. Each time he relied not on brute knowledge but on imagination, improvisation, and empathy, the qualities that made humans unpredictable. At one point, a projection placed him in a city under siege, with alien civilians panicking, fires raging, and no clear path to safety. Elias had no weapons, no reinforcements. Most simulations would have ended in chaos. But he acted calmly, directing individuals to safety, creating safe paths where none seemed possible. The program adapted, throwing unexpected challenges at him, yet he responded with creativity that left the observers, if they were capable of emotion, surprised. Finally, the corridor ended, leading to a chamber filled with soft light. The queen stood waiting, her expression unreadable. Elias felt exhausted but exhilarated, the adrenaline of constant decision-making coursing through him. He realized he had passed the first phase, though he did not know how well. "You have done well," the queen said. Many would fail in a fraction of this time, but this is only the beginning. The trial tests not just intellect but courage. The night is long, and the challenges ahead will demand more than thought. They will demand action. She stepped closer, her presence overwhelming yet strangely comforting. Elias felt the weight of her gaze, the recognition that he was being measured not just for skill, but for character, for potential, for the spark of humanity itself. He understood then that this trial was not merely a test, it was an opportunity. A chance to prove that humans, small and seemingly fragile in the galaxy, could rise to heights that even the most powerful alien minds had not expected. "Rest," she said. "The night continues, and your next challenge awaits." Elias nodded, though he could not move away from the awe and fear swirling inside him. As he lay down on a soft surface that had appeared for him, he stared at the stars outside the chamber. The galaxy seemed close enough to touch, yet infinitely distant. He thought of Earth, of humanity, and of the responsibility that had been thrust upon him. The trial was not just for him, it was a measure of what humans could offer the universe. Sleep came reluctantly, filled with visions of stars, alien landscapes, and challenges yet to come. Yet even in sleep, Elia's mind did not rest entirely. Ideas, solutions, and strategies formed and reformed, as if the universe itself was testing his ability to think beyond limits. He woke not fully refreshed, but ready, knowing that the first night of the trial had already changed him. By the time the next projection appeared, showing a new scenario of danger and decision, Elias understood that fear was not the enemy. Hesitation was not the enemy. The enemy, or perhaps the challenge, was the unknown. And humans, he realized, had always thrived in the face of the unknown. The queen watched from her throne in the distant chamber, silent yet alert. She had observed many candidates from countless species, and yet this human intrigued her. There was a spark in him that algorithms could not predict, patterns could not calculate, and experience alone could not teach. Perhaps, she thought, humanity had a place at the edge of the galaxy that no other species had ever earned. Elias did not know if he would succeed in the next phase, or the phase after that. But he knew one thing with certainty. Humans were resilient, creative, and brave in ways that even the galaxy's most advanced civilizations could underestimate. And tonight, as the stars stretched endlessly beyond the palace walls, he would prove it, not just for himself, but for all of humanity. Elias woke with a start, the soft light of the chamber bathing him in calm. The stars outside still stretched endlessly, but the quiet had changed. He felt a subtle tension in the air, as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. Today, the trial would continue. He could sense it not as a thought, but as a pressure that pressed on his mind and body. The queen's voice came again, clear inside his thoughts, both commanding and serene. Rise, Elias, the next stage begins. He followed the soft guidance of the alien guards as they led him to a new chamber. The walls here were darker, shimmering with a liquid-like surface that reflected his movements in strange ways. The room seemed smaller than the previous chamber, yet it felt alive, pulsing slightly under his feet. Holographic projections appeared as he walked, floating midair in intricate shapes and colors, forming patterns that seemed to dance and shift. "You will face the test of minds," the Queen said, her tone calm yet heavy with expectation. "You will think, you will calculate, and you will decide. Every choice you make will be observed, evaluated, and remembered. Do not underestimate what is required. Only those who can think beyond their limits may succeed." Elias nodded, trying to steady his thoughts. He had always considered himself clever, but the situations he would face were beyond anything human training could prepare him for. The simulations began immediately. The first scenario dropped him into the middle of an alien city, its architecture impossibly tall and fragile, floating above a luminous river of unknown substance. He could hear voices, alien yet familiar in their rhythm, and see crowds panicking as structures swayed and lights flickered. The challenge was clear: find a way to save as many citizens as possible. He looked around. There were multiple paths, each with its own risk. Some led to bridges that were clearly unstable, others through narrow streets where alien vehicles raced uncontrollably. He could do nothing without thinking fast. He observed patterns in the panicked movements, noticing how groups reacted to sound and light differently. Humans relied heavily on observation and intuition. Aliens might rely on logic, but he could use the unpredictability of human creativity to his advantage. Elias made a decision. He shouted instructions in a way the holograms responded to, directing some citizens to safer areas, while carefully guiding the more fragile structures to stabilize with controlled bursts of energy from devices that appeared before him. The city's chaos was overwhelming, yet he felt a strange rhythm emerge, a pattern he could follow if he acted decisively. By the end of the simulation, the city was intact, the holograms of citizens unharmed, and the observers, if they could express it, were impressed. Without pause, the chamber shifted. A new scenario appeared, this one more complex. Elias was placed aboard a starship under attack, responsible for thousands of lives and a crew from multiple species. Alien attackers surrounded them, and defensive systems required precise timing to operate. He had no prior knowledge of the ship's mechanisms, yet he had to act quickly. Here, raw human intuition became an advantage. While alien minds might calculate probabilities to perfection, Elias relied on pattern recognition and improvisation. He identified weak points in the holographic attacker's strategy, using unexpected maneuvers to protect the crew. When one system failed, he repurposed another, turning scarcity into advantage. He realized that humans had always survived by adapting to the unknown, by finding solutions where others saw none. After the simulation ended, he felt a spark of satisfaction. But the Queen's voice reminded him there was no rest. "You are capable of understanding. Now prove you are capable of vision." The next projection shifted again, this time to a negotiation between warring alien factions. They had been fighting for centuries, and centuries of logic had failed to end the conflict. Elias was placed in the role of mediator, with no experience, no authority, and no power beyond his human reasoning. He observed the factions carefully, noting gestures, expressions, and subtle signals that revealed their true priorities. Unlike humans, who could rely on compromise, aliens often demanded logic that left little room for emotion. Yet Elias realized emotion could be a tool. By appealing to their shared interests, he built trust where none existed before. His words were simple but direct, his reasoning clear but flexible. Slowly, the factions began to listen, to respond. By the end of the simulation, an agreement had been reached, fragile but promising. He felt a thrill of achievement. He had done what centuries of alien wisdom had failed to accomplish. The chamber shifted again, darker now, with challenges that pushed him beyond strategy. He was placed in scenarios of moral ambiguity, where decisions could not be measured in success or failure alone. A holographic alien child was at risk, but saving it could endanger dozens of others. A choice had to be made quickly. Elias hesitated only for a heartbeat, and then made the decision that aligned with his principles: protect the innocent first, and then find a solution to save others. The result was unexpected even to him. The simulation adapted, showing consequences he had not predicted. But he learned quickly, adjusting in real time, finding creative solutions that minimized loss while maintaining moral integrity. The experience revealed a truth. Human intuition and courage were not just tools, they were strengths that even advanced aliens could not calculate. Hours passed, though Elias had no way to tell how many. The challenges came faster, more complex, and more unpredictable. Some simulations seemed designed to confuse him, with contradictory information and impossible timelines. Yet he persisted, using observation, imagination, and calm reasoning to navigate the trials. The Queen remained silent, observing, occasionally altering the environment slightly, testing how he would respond under pressure. At one point, he was placed in a simulation where he had to defend a planet from invasion. The forces were overwhelming, alien fleets outnumbering his own, and technology far superior to anything humanity had. But he remembered lessons from his own world. Improvisation, leveraging weakness against strength, and turning limits into opportunities. Using the environment creatively, finding vulnerabilities in the enemy patterns, and inspiring his allies with decisive actions, he managed to avert destruction. The Queen's presence was felt more strongly than ever. She had been watching, not just his decisions, but his thought process, his resilience, and his capacity to act under extreme stress. Unlike other species, humans were unpredictable, their creativity often bordering on chaos, yet there was method within. Elias realized he was being tested not just for skill, but for essence, what it meant to be human, and why humans mattered in a galaxy that often dismissed them as weak. When the final simulation of the phase appeared, Elias found himself in a situation that seemed impossible. He was alone on a spacecraft surrounded by hostile forces, with limited resources and time running out. Every choice could lead to failure, yet he felt something inside, a calm determination, a spark of human ingenuity. He analyzed the situation, predicted enemy patterns, and acted with precision. Where algorithms failed, he adapted. Where brute force was useless, he negotiated. Where hope seemed lost, he created opportunities. The simulation ended, and the chamber dissolved into calm light. Elias sank to his knees, exhausted but triumphant. He had faced challenges that would have broken any other candidate, yet he had survived, adapted, and succeeded. His mind was weary, but his spirit soared. For the first time, he understood why he had been chosen. Humans were not the strongest, nor the fastest, nor the most precise. But humans could think beyond limits, act with courage, and create solutions that even the most advanced alien civilizations could not foresee. The Queen appeared beside him, her presence both terrifying and comforting. "You have performed well," she said. Her voice carried a weight of approval, subtle but unmistakable. "Many species fail to understand what is required, but you understand the power of possibility." Elias looked at her, his chest still heaving from the mental strain. "I did what I had to," he said. I think humans survive because we adapt, because we find solutions when none exist." The Queen's golden eyes regarded him closely. "Yes, adaptation, courage, and vision. These are not qualities every species can cultivate. You are human, and yet you possess the qualities of a leader. Remember, the trial is far from over. The night is long, and your courage will be tested next." Elias nodded, realizing that the test of minds had revealed much about himself, about humanity, and about the unexpected strength that humans brought to the galaxy. It was not sheer power or numbers that mattered, but the ability to think, to create, and to rise when the odds seemed impossible. He felt a sense of pride, not arrogance, but deep, quiet confidence. Humans were underestimated, yet tonight he had proven that they could match the galaxy's greatest civilizations in intellect and ingenuity. As the light of the chamber dimmed, preparing him for the next stage, Elias felt a new determination. The night was only halfway through, and the challenges ahead would require more than thought. They would require courage, action, and the very essence of what made humans human. And he was ready to face them. The Queen returned to her distant throne, her eyes never leaving him. For the first time, she considered that a human might not just survive her trial, but exceed all expectations. Somewhere deep in her mind, she began to imagine what it would mean if this human, small by comparison to the Empire, could rise to a place of leadership, wisdom, and influence. A place she had never imagined for any outsider. Elias felt it too. The weight of potential, the thrill of discovery, and the undeniable truth that the galaxy was full of challenges that humans could meet, adapt to, and overcome. And as he looked out at the stars, he knew that the next phase of the trial would push him further than ever before, testing not just his mind, but his courage, his heart, and his ability to act when the universe itself seemed to demand the impossible. Elias awoke with a sense of purpose. The chamber around him had transformed again. Soft, white light bathed the walls, but it was different now. It carried a sense of challenge, of movement, of anticipation. The Queen's presence was unmistakable, even though she had not appeared. He could feel her observation in every shadow, in every shift of the air around him. "You have proven your mind," her voice echoed gently in his thoughts. "Now you will prove your courage." The path ahead was different from anything Elias had faced so far. A corridor opened before him, long and winding, with shifting floors and walls that seemed to change in height and shape. There was no clear path. Gravity was inconsistent, sometimes pulling down, sometimes sideways, sometimes lightly, almost imperceptibly. He stepped forward cautiously, adjusting to each shift, feeling the air resistance change as though it were alive. The first trial was simple in concept but challenging in execution. Elias was to cross a field of floating platforms, each small and unstable over a bottomless void. Some platforms rotated, others tilted, and some disappeared entirely underfoot, only to reappear moments later. Misstep and he would fall into the void below, though whether death was literal or simulated, he could not tell. Fear prickled at his spine, yet he reminded himself that hesitation was more dangerous than risk. He moved carefully, using a combination of observation and instinct. Humans had always relied on balance, improvisation, and quick thinking to survive unexpected dangers. Elias leapt across the platforms, adjusting his weight, predicting the movement of each step. Several times, the platforms shifted unexpectedly, yet he adapted instantly, finding new paths with a calm focus that surprised even himself. Once across, he entered a chamber filled with creatures that appeared both beautiful and terrifying. Their limbs were long and spindly, eyes glowing faintly, bodies partially transparent. They were not hostile, yet their presence demanded caution. Elias was instructed to retrieve an object at the far end of the room, but the creatures moved unpredictably, responding to any approach he made. The challenge was to act with courage, without provoking unnecessary aggression, while also solving the puzzle of reaching the object. Elias observed carefully. The creatures reacted to patterns, to rhythm, to subtle movements. By matching their movements, moving in harmony rather than force, he slowly made his way across the room. His heart raced with each step, but he remained calm, careful, and precise. By the time he reached the object, a small crystal glowing with inner light, he realized that courage was not just facing danger. It was facing it with intelligence, empathy, and understanding. The next trial pushed him further. A projection appeared of a human colony under threat, but this time, it was not aliens or machines attacking. It was the environment itself. Storms of unimaginable strength swept across landscapes, volcanoes erupted, and rivers of molten rock flowed unpredictably. Elias had to guide a group of holographic humans and aliens to safety, using limited resources, limited time, and his judgment alone. He acted quickly, analyzing terrain, predicting storm paths, and making rapid decisions. Several times, a path seemed impossible, yet he improvised, building makeshift bridges, redirecting flowing lava, and motivating his companions to follow. The simulation tested not only courage but leadership. Elias realized that humans thrived not by avoiding danger, but by thinking creatively under pressure, by trusting their instincts, and by acting decisively. By the end, most of the holographic colonists were safe, and he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The chamber shifted again, revealing a test more personal and subtle. A holographic version of someone from his past appeared, a friend, a family member, someone he deeply cared about, trapped in a dangerous situation. He could save them, but doing so risked the lives of dozens of others, innocents who had no connection to him. The choice was agonizing. Elias hesitated, his mind racing. He could not make this decision lightly. Human emotions were complex, sometimes messy, yet they could be guided by reason and principle. He chose a path that minimized overall harm while still protecting the person he cared about. The simulation responded, showing consequences he had not anticipated, teaching him that courage included responsibility and foresight, not just boldness. He realized that true bravery often required difficult choices, sacrifices, and the strength to carry them. Hours seemed to pass, though he could not measure time. Each trial built upon the last, testing different aspects of courage. He faced illusions of fear, projections designed to prey on his insecurities, and scenarios meant to paralyze him with indecision. At each turn, he relied on the combination of observation, instinct, and careful reasoning that humans had honed over millennia. The Queen's presence was constant, silent yet profound, watching how he faced challenges that were both real and unreal. At one point, Elias was placed in a zero-gravity arena with simulated predators surrounding him. These creatures moved faster than he could track, their senses acute, their attack patterns unpredictable. He had no weapons, no armor, nothing but his mind and body. Most would panic, but Elias had learned to control fear. He observed the predators' movements, anticipating their approach. By using the environment to his advantage, floating debris, shifting platforms, and his own agility, he managed to evade them while reaching a safe point in the arena. It was not strength, not weapons, but courage guided by intelligence that allowed him to succeed. Next came a test of moral courage. He was presented with two holographic groups in danger. One group required immediate action but had limited chance of survival. The other could be saved with careful planning, though the process was slower. He had to choose whom to prioritize. Elias weighed the options quickly, relying on both his instincts and ethical reasoning. He decided to act in a way that balanced immediate needs with long-term outcomes, understanding that courage was not simply about rushing in blindly. It was about responsibility, judgment, and the willingness to face consequences. As the night progressed, Elias began to understand a deeper truth. The Queen was not testing him simply for fear or bravery. She was observing how a human mind approached danger, uncertainty, and moral complexity. Humans were not the fastest, the strongest, or the most precise species in the galaxy, yet their ability to adapt, improvise, and act with empathy and foresight was unmatched. Every challenge confirmed that humans could rise to situations that even the most advanced alien civilizations might fail to navigate. In the final trial of the phase, he faced a scenario that combined every challenge he had encountered: a collapsing environment, hostile creatures, moral dilemmas, and impossible choices. The simulation seemed designed to overwhelm him, to break him mentally and physically. Yet Elias remained focused. He applied everything he had learned, combining observation, intuition, strategy, courage, and compassion. He found paths where none seemed possible, saved lives against overwhelming odds, and made decisions that balanced ethics with practicality. When the simulation ended, he collapsed on the floor, exhausted beyond measure. Sweat covered his body and his muscles ached, but a thrill ran through him. He had faced challenges that no other human, or perhaps no other being, could have survived, yet he had endured. Courage, he realized, was more than facing danger. It was the combination of mind, body, and spirit acting together in harmony under pressure. The Queen appeared before him, her form glowing softly. She knelt slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement rare in her culture. "You have shown courage beyond expectation," she said. "Many species fail here. Many cannot understand what it means to face danger with foresight, compassion, and resolve. You are human, and yet you embody qualities that even we, who have ruled for millennia, must respect." Elias felt a surge of pride, though he kept it tempered. Pride could blind a person, and humility was necessary for what lay ahead. "Thank you," he said quietly. I did what I thought was right." The Queen studied him, her golden eyes reflecting both judgment and fascination. "Rightness is not always clear, yet humans have a way of finding solutions where others see none. That is why you were chosen. That is why you endure." As Elias rested, he thought about the lessons of the night. Courage was not just physical bravery. It was the ability to act under pressure, to make difficult choices, to protect others, and to rise above fear. Humans had always survived against overwhelming odds, not because of raw power, but because of ingenuity, resilience, and heart. The Queen had seen it, the simulations had tested it, and now he understood that this trial was not just about proving himself. It was about demonstrating humanity's unique strength to the galaxy. Finally, the chamber softened into calm light again, signaling the end of the phase. Elias sat quietly, staring at the stars beyond the palace walls. The next trials would demand even more. The queen would now test not just mind and courage, but character, leadership, and vision. He had proven himself in ways that others had failed, yet he knew the hardest challenges were still to come. The night outside seemed endless, yet within him burned a quiet determination. Humans had survived countless hardships, navigated impossible circumstances, and risen against all odds. Elias understood now that he was not just facing a trial, he was carrying the potential of his species. And if he could succeed, if he could endure the next phases, he would prove that humans were more than capable of standing among the stars, respected and admired by civilizations far older and more advanced than his own. The queen's voice returned, softer now, as if a shadow of approval lingered. "Rest, Elias. Tomorrow you will face the final challenges of the night. Courage alone is not enough. Vision, wisdom, and leadership will be required. Be ready." Elias nodded, his body weary but his spirit unbroken. He lay back, gazing at the stars, reflecting on what he had learned. Courage was not absence of fear, it was action in spite of it, guided by intellect, ethics, and empathy. Humanity's strength, he realized, lay in the combination of these qualities. Tonight had proven that humans could match the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, not by force, but by heart, mind, and spirit combined. Elias woke to a soft glow that filled the chamber, the stars outside burning brightly as if aware of the challenge he now faced. The queen's presence was still there, more subtle this time, like a shadow watching his every thought. Her voice echoed in his mind, calm but commanding. "The final phase begins. You have proven your mind and your courage. Now you must demonstrate vision and leadership." He rose carefully, feeling the weight of the night pressing on him. Every moment until now had been a test, and now the ultimate challenge awaited. He was led to a large observation hall that overlooked a vast holographic galaxy. The stars, planets, and distant fleets floated before him, each representing civilizations, colonies, and worlds in motion. Here, he would be asked to make decisions that had consequences far beyond himself. The first scenario appeared. A minor conflict had escalated between two distant colonies. The holographic leaders were stubborn, their cultures vastly different, their history full of mistrust. Elias was to intervene to prevent a war that could spread across multiple systems. He took a deep breath and began observing the patterns. One faction valued direct solutions and quick decisions, the other preferred diplomacy and patience. Neither would accept a simple answer. Elias realized that leadership was not about domination. It was about understanding others, balancing priorities, and finding creative solutions. He spoke to the holographic leaders with clarity, showing understanding for both sides while proposing a compromise that addressed key concerns. He anticipated objections and countered them with tact, explaining potential consequences with simple logic and persuasive reasoning. Slowly, the factions began to respond. By the end of the simulation, what could have escalated into war became a treaty, fragile but meaningful. Elias felt a thrill of satisfaction. Leadership was not just about power, it was about insight, patience, and vision. The chamber shifted, bringing him into the next scenario, far more complex. A massive fleet of alien ships was approaching a neutral planet, and Elias had to organize defenses, allocate resources, and protect civilians, all while avoiding unnecessary conflict. He had no prior experience with alien technology, yet he knew that improvisation and human intuition could be his greatest assets. He analyzed the fleet's patterns, predicting possible attack strategies. He coordinated the holographic defenders, suggesting maneuvers that combined speed, agility, and clever traps rather than brute force. He prioritized protecting lives over destroying the enemy, demonstrating that humans could lead with both intelligence and ethics. The simulation adapted, testing his ability to respond to unexpected events. When one defensive system failed, he quickly redirected resources elsewhere. When an enemy ship approached an unprotected zone, he devised a diversion using environmental features. By the end, the planet remained unharmed, and the holographic population survived. Elias realized that leadership was about seeing the bigger picture, about guiding others even when the path was uncertain. The queen's gaze, though distant, seemed to acknowledge his growing understanding. Humans were often underestimated for their lack of advanced technology or sheer strength, but their creativity, adaptability, and empathy gave them a unique edge. Next came a test that was less about strategy and more about moral vision. Elias was presented with a scenario where an epidemic threatened a populous world. He had limited resources and could save only some immediately. Others would have to wait, and inaction might cause deaths. He had to prioritize and make choices that balanced immediate needs with long-term survival. Elias thought carefully. He identified the most critical cases and developed a plan to extend resources efficiently. He assigned teams to contain the spread, educate the population, and prevent panic. Every decision required foresight, planning, and courage. He realized that true leadership meant taking responsibility for outcomes, not simply making decisions that felt safe. By the end, the epidemic was controlled in the simulation, and he understood the importance of vision in guiding not just actions, but entire societies. Hours passed as the simulations grew increasingly complex. He faced scenarios that tested negotiation, diplomacy, logistics, and ethics all at once. Some involved multiple species with conflicting interests, requiring careful mediation. Others required him to respond to natural disasters or strategic threats without clear guidance. Each situation forced him to adapt quickly, think clearly under pressure, and act decisively. At one point, he was placed in a simulation where an entire civilization faced extinction from a natural catastrophe. The inhabitants looked to him, a human, for guidance. He was overwhelmed at first, but he remembered what he had learned from previous trials. Calm observation, creative thinking, and empathy could overcome even impossible odds. He devised an evacuation plan, prioritized resources, and inspired the inhabitants to follow him. By the end, many lives were saved, and the civilization survived, fragile but hopeful. Elias felt the weight of responsibility and the power of leadership in a way he had never experienced before. The next scenario was more subtle but no less challenging. He was shown a political crisis within the alien empire itself. Different factions vied for power, some advocating aggression, others caution. His task was to advise the queen and influence the outcome without direct authority. He understood that leadership often required influence rather than command. He analyzed the factions, motivations, proposed compromises, and highlighted shared interests. Slowly, tension eased, and a path forward became clear. He realized that leadership was as much about communication and trust as it was about decisions. Finally, the last simulation combined all he had learned: strategy, courage, morality, and vision. He faced a scenario where an alien civilization was on the brink of collapse due to internal strife, environmental collapse, and external threats. He had limited resources, multiple factions to manage, and lives at stake. The pressure was immense, but he relied on every skill he had developed during the night. He assessed the situation, identified priorities, and coordinated actions. He saved lives, guided factions to compromise, and stabilized the environment. Every choice required foresight and courage, every action had consequences, and he balanced all of them with clarity and calm. By the end, the civilization survived, the factions learned to work together, and the external threat was neutralized. Elias realized that vision and leadership were not innate traits. They were cultivated through observation, experience, and the courage to act. The chamber shifted, and the queen appeared before him, her presence radiant and imposing. "You have demonstrated what few can," she said. "You see beyond immediate concerns. You act with courage, morality, and foresight. You understand leadership not as power over others, but as responsibility for them. That is why you were chosen." Elias felt a mixture of relief and pride. He had faced challenges that no other human, or perhaps no other being, could have survived. Yet he remained humble, knowing that the final judgment had not yet been made. He had proven himself in mind, courage, and leadership, but the queen's final decision still awaited. "You have exceeded expectations," the queen continued. "Many would fail in fear, indecision, or arrogance. You have acted with intelligence, empathy, and vision. That is what it means to be human." Elias reflected on the journey of the night. He had learned that humanity's strength was not in technology or brute force, but in creativity, courage, moral judgment, and vision. Humans could see possibilities where others saw obstacles, inspire others to act, and take responsibility when the stakes were highest. The simulations had tested him, pushed him to his limits, and forced him to discover what made humans unique in the galaxy. The Queen's golden eyes studied him closely, her expression unreadable yet full of consideration. Tomorrow, you may rise beyond this trial, but remember, leadership is not about glory. It is about responsibility, empathy, and the courage to face consequences. You have shown all these tonight, and yet the final choice remains with me. Elias bowed his head slightly, acknowledging her words. He felt exhaustion, but also a renewed sense of purpose. The trial had been grueling, testing every aspect of his mind, body, and character. Yet it had also shown him the potential of humans and the possibilities that lay ahead. As he prepared to rest once more, the chamber softened into calm light. He gazed at the stars beyond the palace walls, reflecting on the lessons he had learned. Leadership was not a matter of force or authority. It was vision, courage, and the willingness to act when others could not. Humanity's strength lay in these qualities, and tonight he had proven that humans could rise to meet challenges that even the most advanced alien civilizations might fail to navigate. The Queen's voice returned, softer now, a whisper in his mind. Rest, Elias. Soon you will face the final moments of the night. Prepare yourself, for what comes next will require every skill, every strength, and every insight you possess. Only then will your worth be fully revealed. Elias nodded, lying down with a mixture of exhaustion and anticipation. He thought of Earth, of humanity, and of the responsibility that had been placed upon him. The trial was almost complete, and he understood that the final phase would determine not just his fate, but the recognition of humans in the galaxy. He closed his eyes, letting the calm wash over him, and prepared for the final challenges. The stars outside seemed brighter than ever, and he felt a deep certainty. Humans had the ability to rise, to inspire, and to prove their value not through dominance, but through intelligence, courage, and vision. And tomorrow, when the Queen passed her judgment, he would stand ready to show that humanity was worthy of a place among the stars. Elias woke to a stillness he had never known. The chamber around him was bathed in soft golden light, the stars outside glowing with quiet intensity. Tonight was the final phase of the trial. He had proven his mind, his courage, and his vision. Now he would face the Queen's ultimate judgment. The weight of expectation pressed on him, yet he felt a strange calm. He was ready. The Queen appeared before him, floating slightly above the crystalline floor. Her golden eyes regarded him carefully, and for a moment, Elias felt as if she could see into the deepest parts of his being, his thoughts, his fears, his hopes. Elias, she said, her voice both firm and gentle, you have endured the trial of 1,000 challenges. You have proven intellect, courage, and vision, yet the final test is not about skill. It is about understanding what it means to lead, to inspire, and to bear responsibility beyond yourself. Elias swallowed, trying to steady his voice. I understand, he said. I have learned what it means to think, to act, and to care. I am ready for whatever comes next. The Queen inclined her head slightly. Then step forward. The chamber dissolved around him, replaced by a projection of a massive galactic conflict. Entire star systems teetered on the edge of destruction. Alien civilizations that had once been rivals now faced a threat so great that only unity could save them. Elias was placed at the center, tasked with coordinating a response that could preserve countless lives. There were no instructions, no guides, only his reasoning, his courage, and his vision. He took a deep breath and began. Observing patterns of movement, communication, and behavior, he began to organize defenses. He assigned fleets to strategic positions, coordinated resources, and encouraged alliances where mistrust had once ruled. Every decision carried consequences, yet he relied on the lessons he had learned: observation, improvisation, courage, and empathy. A fleet of alien ships moved unpredictably, threatening a vulnerable planet. Elias acted quickly, using unconventional tactics to redirect their path without destroying lives. His choices were not about domination, but about balance, not about power, but about preservation. The simulation adapted, introducing new challenges, yet he continued to respond with clarity and decisiveness. At one point, he faced a moral dilemma within the projection. A small planet was at immediate risk, while a larger fleet faced delayed danger. Sacrificing one might save the other. He paused only for a moment, then made a choice guided by principle and foresight. The The smaller planet was protected first, but he devised a plan to save the larger fleet as well, combining human creativity with tactical planning. As the simulation continued, he realized something profound. The Queen's trial was not about testing his ability to react, but his ability to inspire trust. Even in a holographic scenario, he felt the weight of leadership, the responsibility of guiding others under impossible circumstances. Humans were often underestimated for their size, technology, and history, yet he now understood that their greatest strength lay in their ability to act with courage, intelligence, and empathy simultaneously. Hours passed, though time had no meaning here. Each scenario built upon the last, growing more complex, more demanding. He faced natural disasters, internal conflicts, and alien fleets threatening worlds that depended on his judgment. Every time he relied not on force or dominance, but on insight, improvisation, and the ability to predict behavior. The projection responded as if alive, testing him at every turn. Finally, the simulation ended. Elias stood alone in the chamber, exhausted yet exhilarated. He had faced challenges beyond imagining, yet he had acted with clarity, courage, and vision. Every choice he had made had reflected not just intelligence, but understanding, empathy, and moral responsibility. He realized that this was the essence of leadership, not simply giving orders but inspiring trust, finding solutions where none seemed possible, and accepting the weight of consequences. The Queen's voice returned, calm and resonant. "You have demonstrated more than skill or strength. You have shown understanding, courage, and wisdom. You see not just the immediate but the long term, not just yourself but the lives of countless others. You are ready." Elias felt his chest swell with a mixture of pride and humility. Pride not for himself but for humanity. For centuries, humans had struggled, adapted, and survived. They had been underestimated by the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilizations, yet here he stood, proving that their ingenuity and spirit were unmatched. The Queen descended from her floating position, approaching him slowly. She extended a crystalline crown, its light reflecting like countless stars. "This crown is not a symbol of power over others," she said. "It is a symbol of trust, of responsibility, and of the capacity to rise to challenges that most would fear. Place it upon your head if you accept what it represents." Elias hesitated for only a moment, then took the crown in his hands. Its weight was heavier than he expected, not physically, but in the responsibility it carried. He placed it carefully upon his head, and in that instant he felt a surge of understanding. Leadership was not a title or a position. It was a commitment to act wisely, to inspire others, and to bear consequences with courage and integrity. The Queen smiled, a rare expression in her culture, one of recognition and approval. "You have proven that humanity can rise to the greatest challenges, that our kind can endure, adapt, and inspire. You are worthy of this honor." Alien ambassadors and observers from across the galaxy began to appear, acknowledging Elias with respect and admiration. He realized that his success was not just personal, it was a recognition of humanity itself. For the first time, humans were being seen not as weak, limited, or primitive, but as capable, resilient, and worthy of standing among the stars. Elias felt a deep sense of responsibility settle within him. The crown was not a reward, it was a duty. He would have to guide, inspire, and make decisions that affected countless lives. Yet he also felt a profound pride in the human capacity for creativity, courage, and moral insight. The trial had tested him in every way, and he had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready. The Queen spoke once more. "Remember, Elias, this crown is not for glory. It is for the future, for hope, and for the understanding that even the smallest species can achieve greatness when courage and wisdom are combined. Lead with intelligence, empathy, and vision, and you will inspire the galaxy." Elias nodded, understanding fully. He looked out at the stars, the endless expanse that had once seemed distant and unreachable. Now it felt within grasp, a canvas for humanity's potential. He realized that the trial was not just about proving himself. It was about proving that humans had the qualities to rise to any challenge, to inspire trust and hope, and to make a difference in a galaxy that often overlooked them. As the Queen stepped back, Elias felt a shift within the chamber. The stars seemed brighter, the air filled with anticipation, and the sense of possibility stretched endlessly. He was no longer just a human among aliens. He was a representative of humanity's potential, a symbol that humans could endure, adapt, and inspire in ways no one had predicted. The crown on his head gleamed like a constellation, reflecting the trials he had faced, the courage he had shown, and the vision he had displayed. He understood that the journey was far from over. The galaxy would challenge him again, but he was ready. Humanity had been underestimated for too long, and now, through him, the universe would see their strength, ingenuity, and spirit. The Queen's presence lingered, though she no longer spoke. Elias could feel her observation, a reminder that leadership carried responsibility, not just recognition. He took a deep breath, feeling a sense of purpose settle within him. The trial had ended, but the path forward was just beginning. And he would walk it with the knowledge that humans, small and often overlooked, could rise to challenges that even the most advanced civilizations might fear to face. He turned to the assembled ambassadors, his voice steady and clear. Humans have always faced the impossible. We adapt, we endure, and we rise. I am honored to carry this responsibility, but it is not mine alone. Humanity stands ready, and together we will face the future with courage, intelligence, and vision. A quiet wave of respect and understanding passed through the observers. For the first time, humans were recognized not as newcomers or weaklings, but as equals, capable of leadership, insight, and inspiration. Elias felt the weight of this acknowledgement, and also the hope it represented for his species. The Queen finally spoke, her voice carrying across the chamber. Tonight, the galaxy has witnessed the strength of humanity, not in weapons or numbers, but in mind, heart, and spirit. You, Elias, embody the qualities that all species should admire and learn from. The crown is yours, and with it, the responsibility to guide, inspire, and endure. Elias nodded solemnly, feeling the gravity of her words. He looked out at the galaxy, aware that every star, every civilization, and every challenge now lay within the reach of humanity's potential. He was proud not just of himself, but of what humans could achieve when faced with impossible odds. As the chamber softened into calm light, the stars outside seeming to stretch endlessly, Elias realized the truth the trial had revealed. Strength was not always physical, intelligence was not always measured by calculation, and courage was not always fearless. Humanity's greatest power was the combination of mind, heart, and spirit, a combination that allowed them to adapt, survive, and inspire. And tonight, humanity had been recognized for it. The crown upon his head was more than a symbol, it was a promise. A promise that humans could rise, that they could endure, and that they could stand among the stars with courage, wisdom, and vision. Elias felt a deep sense of purpose and calm. The trial had ended, but the journey was just beginning. With the Queen's silent approval and the galaxy watching, Elias took his first steps as a human worthy of the crown. Every decision he made, every action he took, would now carry the potential to shape the future. And he would face it with the knowledge that humanity's spirit was unmatched, underestimated no longer, and ready to rise to any challenge the universe could present. For the first time in his life, Elias felt that human potential was limitless. And he knew that he was ready to lead, to inspire, and to show the galaxy what humans could achieve.